The great chamber of the Galactic Coordination Council stood mostly empty. Only 3 days had passed since the humans left, but their absence felt like a wound that would not heal. Council Speaker Zethkar of the Velkari Empire stood at his podium, his 6 eyes scanning the empty seats where human delegates once sat. For 150 years, humans had occupied those 12 simple chairs. They never demanded the fancy floating platforms like the Zephyrians used. They never asked for the heated stone seats that the Krillians needed. Just plain metal chairs with thin cushions. Even their seating showed how unremarkable they were. Zethkar's aide, a young Velkari named Rintal, approached with nervous steps. His purple skin had turned almost white with worry. "Speaker, we have received the final count. All human personnel have departed from council space. Every single one." "All of them?" Zethkar's voice carried more surprise than he intended. "Even the maintenance crews?" "Yes, Speaker. Even the humans who cleaned the waste systems on Outer Station 7. They all left within the same 48-hour period. No one was forced, no one complained. They just went." Zethkar looked again at those empty chairs. Ambassador Sarah Chen had sat in the front chair for 23 years. She was a small woman with graying hair who spoke softly and smiled often. During heated debates, she would take notes in her strange human writing system. She never shouted like the Threndaki delegates. She never made grand speeches like the Proxen representatives. She just listened and asked questions. "What was their final message?" Zethkar asked. Rintal activated his datapad. The holographic display showed a simple text document. No fancy graphics or ceremonial language that other species used for important announcements. Just plain words on a dark background. "To the Galactic Coordination Council," Rintal read aloud. "Humanity formally withdraws from all council activities effective immediately. All human-owned assets, properties, and resources are transferred to council control. Attached are the coordinates to human space boundaries. These boundaries are now closed to all non-human traffic. This decision is final. No further communication will be necessary." "That's it?" Zethkar's mandibles clicked together in disbelief. "No explanation, no demands, no threats?" "Nothing else, Speaker. Just coordinates and legal transfer documents. All properly signed and verified." Across the chamber, other delegates were arriving for the morning session. The Silthari Trade Minister floated in on his gravity platform, his crystalline body catching the artificial sunlight. The Proxen War Speaker stomped in wearing his ceremonial armor, the metal plates clanking with each step. Representatives from 45 different species filled their seats, but those 12 human chairs remained empty. Ambassador Quintel of the Zephyrian Republic glided over to Zethkar's platform. Her energy form shimmered blue and silver as she moved. "This is actually good news," she said, her voice like wind chimes. "Humans always slowed down our progress. They objected to everything." "They were cautious," Zethkar replied. "Too cautious. Remember the Grand Expansion Protocol? We could have started colonizing the Outer Rim 50 years ago, but humans kept asking for more studies, more safety checks, more time." Quintel's form brightened with excitement. "Now we can finally move forward." Other delegates began to gather around them. The mood was surprisingly cheerful. Many species had grown tired of human objections to their plans. "They blocked the Universal Resource Allocation Act for 30 years, said War Speaker Bromdar of the Proxen Hegemony. His voice boomed through his helmet's speakers. "Always worried about fair distribution and long-term stability. Warriors don't need fairness. We need strength." Trade Minister Silhan's crystalline form pulsed with agreement. Human trade practices were too slow, too many safety rules, too much paperwork. "My people can triple our profits without their interference." Dr. Morwen of the Threndaki Science Collective tilted her large head thoughtfully. Her people were known for careful thinking, much like humans. Are we certain this is wise? Humans served important functions. Like what? Quintel asked. Name one important thing they did. Dr. Morwen paused. They handled disputes, mediation services. We can handle our own disputes, Bromdar declared. They managed logistics networks, Dr. Morwen continued. Boring work that any species can do, Silhan replied. They maintained communication protocols. Technology can replace them, Quintel said dismissively. Dr. Morwen fell silent, but her expression remained troubled. Zethkar called the session to order. The first item was the Grand Expansion Protocol. For decades, humans had insisted on detailed surveys before approving new colony worlds. They wanted soil samples, weather pattern studies, and native life surveys that took years to complete. I move for immediate approval, Bromdar announced. The Proxen fleet is ready to establish 40 new colonies in the Outer Rim. We have identified suitable worlds. Seconded, Silhan agreed. My traders are eager to exploit new mineral resources. The vote was unanimous. 43 species approved the expansion. Only Dr. Morwen abstained. Next came the Universal Resource Allocation Act. This would centralize all resource distribution through the Council, allowing for maximum efficiency in trade. Humans had always opposed this plan, claiming it would hurt smaller species and create dangerous dependencies. Again, the vote was overwhelming. The act passed with only 2 abstentions. In just one morning, the Council accomplished more than it had in the previous 5 years. Without human opposition, decisions came quickly and easily. But something felt wrong to Zethkar. The chamber seemed too quiet, not because of the missing voices. Humans rarely spoke during votes anyway. It was something else, something he couldn't identify. As delegates filed out for the lunch break, Zethkar noticed Rintal studying his datapad with a confused expression. What troubles you, Aide? Speaker, I am reviewing the human transfer documents. They gave us everything. Space stations, research facilities, trade agreements, even their personal belongings. The total value is... Rintal's skin paled further. This cannot be correct. What is the value? According to these documents, humans owned or controlled 47% of all Council infrastructure. They managed supply lines for 68% of interspecies trade. They provided maintenance services for 73% of our communication networks. Zethkar's 6 eyes widened. That cannot be right. Humans were minor participants. They had small delegations, quiet voices. The documents are verified by all Council banks and registry services, Rintal said quietly. Speaker, if these numbers are correct, humans were not minor participants. They were what? Rintal's voice was barely a whisper. They were holding everything together. Outside the great chamber, the first automated message began playing throughout Council space. It was a simple recording that had played every day for 150 years. A human voice speaking in the common trade language. Good morning, Council citizens. Today's supply shipments are on schedule. Weather alerts for agricultural worlds are green. All communication networks are operating normally. Trade routes are clear and secure. Have a productive day. The message had always played at noon. Today, for the first time in 150 years, there was only silence. And in that silence, the first cracks began to show. 2 months had passed since the humans left. Council Speaker Zethkar should have felt proud. The Grand Expansion Protocol was moving forward. 40 new colony worlds were being prepared for settlement. The Universal Resource Allocation Act was creating new trade opportunities. But instead, he felt tired. Zethkar sat in his private office, surrounded by complaint reports. Each day brought more problems. Small ones at first, but they were growing larger. His aide, Rintal, entered carrying another stack of documents. The young Velkari's skin had lost its healthy purple color. These days, Rintal looked more gray than purple. Speaker, We have 3 new disputes that require immediate attention. What now? Zethkar asked. The Silthari Mining Corporation and the Proxan Hegemony are fighting over asteroid mining rights in the Kepler system. Both sides claim they had prior agreements. Zethkar rubbed his temples. Check the archive records. Find the original contracts. I did, Speaker. There are 17 different contract versions, all signed by different species at different times. The filing system is... Rintal paused, searching for the right word. Broken. What do you mean, broken? The human filing clerks used a complex organization method. They tagged each document with hundreds of reference codes, cross-linked everything, made notes about which contracts affected other contracts. Without them, finding anything takes days instead of minutes. Zethkar sighed. What are the other disputes? The Thendari Science Collective and the Zephyrian Republic are arguing about research station access rights. And the Outer Rim colonies are reporting supply chain failures. Supply chain failures? But we just approved increased resource allocation. Yes, Speaker, but the allocation system was managed entirely by human logistics specialists. They use prediction programs to calculate what each world needed and when. They coordinated shipping schedules across 47 different species transport fleets. Rintal's voice grew smaller. No one else knows how their system worked. Zethkar stood and walked to his window. Outside, he could see the great space station that served as council headquarters. Ships from dozens of worlds docked and undocked in carefully coordinated patterns. Or they used to be carefully coordinated. Now he could see 3 ships waiting in holding patterns. Their captains were probably arguing with traffic control about docking priorities. How did these problems not exist before? Zethkar asked. They did exist, Speaker, but humans handled them quietly. They never brought small disputes to the council floor. They just fixed things. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. Rintal activated the holographic display. Ambassador Val 9 of the Zephyrian Republic appeared, her energy form crackling with frustration. Speaker Zethkar, we need immediate council intervention. The Silthari have cut off all trade with our colonies in Sector 7. What is their complaint? Zethkar asked. They claim we owe them 3 years of back payments for rare mineral shipments, but our records show all payments were made on time. Have you checked with their records? Their records are in Silthari crystal language. Our translators cannot read it properly. The meaning changes depending on light frequency and crystal resonance. Val 9's form dimmed with exhaustion. We need someone who understands both our energy speech and their crystal writing. Zethkar realized the problem immediately. The humans had universal translators. More than that, Rintal added quietly. Human diplomats learned to speak every major language. Ambassador Chen spoke 14 different languages fluently. She could mediate between any 2 species without translation devices. Val 9's image flickered. Speaker, this is a crisis. The Silthari are threatening to extend the trade embargo to all Zephyrian territories. Our colonies depend on their mineral shipments for basic technology. We will schedule a mediation session, Zethkar promised. When? Zethkar looked at his calendar. Between the 3 pending disputes and regular council business, he could not find an open slot for weeks. Next month. Next month? Speaker, our colonies will run out of essential minerals in 12 days. Then you must negotiate directly with the Silthari. Val 9's form turned red with anger. We tried. They refused to meet with us. They say we are dishonest energy beings who cannot be trusted without neutral witnesses. After Val 9 disconnected, Zethkar sat in silence. Finally, he asked, how did Ambassador Chen handle disputes like this? Rintal consulted his records. According to her schedule logs, she held informal meetings every day, usually during meal times or between sessions. She would invite both sides for what she called coffee talks. They would discuss problems in a relaxed setting. Coffee? A human stimulant drink, hot liquid made from ground seeds. Ambassador Chen always carried a thermal container of it. She said it helped people think clearly. Rintal paused. She also kept a small heating device in her office to prepare fresh coffee for visitors. Zethkar had seen Ambassador Chen's coffee ritual hundreds of times, but never understood its importance. She would pour the dark liquid into small cups and offer it to everyone who entered her office. Even species who couldn't drink it would hold the warm cups as a gesture of friendship. What happened to her coffee device? Zethkar asked. It was transferred to council storage with all other human property. That afternoon, Zethkar decided to tour the station's operations centers. He wanted to understand what the humans had actually done each day. The communications center was chaos. Messages from 47 different species were backing up in the processing queues. Translation errors were creating confusion. Several military fleets had received contradictory movement orders. The humans ran message verification protocols, explained Chief Operator Victor of the Krillian Mining Collective. They checked every message for accuracy before sending. They knew which species used which communication methods. They prevented misunderstandings. The logistics center was worse. Supply schedules that had run smoothly for decades were falling apart. Ships were arriving at wrong destinations. Critical supplies were delayed. Food shipments were spoiling because delivery routes took too long. Human logistics officers worked 18-hour shifts, said Operations Manager Tolvin of the Outer Colonies. They monitored thousands of supply lines simultaneously. They predicted problems before they happened. They rerouted shipments around weather delays and political disputes. The maintenance center was understaffed and overwhelmed. Equipment throughout the station was breaking down faster than repair crews could fix it. Humans handled all the small repairs, explained Maintenance Chief Borak of the Engineering Guild, replacing worn cables, updating software, cleaning filters. They prevented big breakdowns by fixing little problems immediately. Zethkar returned to his office feeling hollow. Each department told the same story. Humans had been working quietly in the background, handling thousands of tasks that other species considered boring or unimportant. But those boring tasks kept everything running. That night, Zethkar reviewed personnel records. The numbers were disturbing. Humans had made up only 8% of council staff, but they had handled 46% of daily operations. They worked longer hours than any other species. They volunteered for overtime shifts. They never complained about difficult assignments. And now they were gone. The next morning brought worse news. 2 more trade disputes had escalated to threats of violence. The Kepler asteroid conflict had drawn in 3 additional species. Supply failures were spreading to 12 colony worlds. Zethkar made a difficult decision. He sent exploration probes toward the coordinates humans had provided. He needed to talk to them, to ask for help. The probes returned 3 days later with impossible data. The coordinates led to empty space. No planets, no ships, no space stations, no trace of human civilization anywhere. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from the galaxy, but the problems they had prevented were very real, and they were getting worse every day. 6 months had passed since humanity vanished. Council Speaker Zethkar stood before the emergency assembly, his 6 eyes reflecting the red warning lights that now flashed throughout the chamber. What should have been the Council's greatest triumph had become its greatest disaster. The Grand Expansion Protocol was failing catastrophically. Colony 7 is completely abandoned, reported Admiral Kekstar of the Proxan Fleet. His massive armor was scratched and dented from rescue operations. The colonists ran out of food in the 3rd week. We evacuated the survivors yesterday. Colony 12's atmospheric processors failed, added Dr. Hilvan of the Threndaki Science Collective. The backup life support systems were never installed. 40,000 colonists are breathing recycled air that will run out in 6 days. War Speaker Bromdar stood from his seat, his voice booming through the chamber. "This is impossible. We followed all established protocols. We surveyed each world. We confirmed they were suitable for life." "Did you test the soil?" asked Dr. Morwen quietly. "Of course we tested the soil." "Did you test it for 17 different mineral compositions across 4 seasons and 8 different climate zones, then cross-reference the results with the dietary needs of 43 different species?" Bromdar's helmet speakers crackled with static. "What?" Dr. Morwen activated her holographic display. It showed a human document labeled Colony World Assessment Protocol, Standard Procedures Manual. "This is what humans did before approving any colony world," she explained. "The document is 4,000 pages long. It covers soil chemistry, weather patterns, native microbiology, geological stability, magnetic field variations, solar radiation cycles, and atmospheric composition changes across multiple planetary seasons." The chamber fell silent as delegates read the document summary. "We conducted basic habitability scans," Trade Minister Silhan said defensively. "The world showed green for oxygen, gravity, and temperature." "Human surveys went deeper," Dr. Morwen continued. "They tested how soil nutrients would affect crop yields over 20-year periods. They studied how seasonal weather changes would impact different species' biology. They identified potential geological hazards like underground gas deposits or unstable mountain formations." "Why didn't they share this information?" demanded Ambassador Quintel, her energy form flickering with anger. "They tried," Dr. Morwen said sadly. "Every colony proposal included detailed human assessment reports, but other species called them unnecessary bureaucracy and excessive caution. The reports were usually ignored." Zethkar felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "How many colonies are failing?" 37 out of 40, Admiral Kekstar reported. "The other 3 are only surviving because they happen to be near existing trade routes with emergency supply access." But the colony failures were only part of the problem. The Universal Resource Allocation Act was creating economic chaos throughout council space. Trade Minister Silhan's crystalline form had lost its usual bright glow. "The Krillian Mining Consortium is facing complete collapse. Their efficiency ratings have dropped by 78%. "How is that possible?" Bromdar asked. "The humans designed their logistics networks," Silhan explained. "Mining operations across 400 worlds were coordinated through human prediction algorithms. The computers calculated optimal mining schedules, equipment maintenance timing, and cargo transport routes." "Use the same computers," Quintel suggested. "We tried. The human programs are incredibly complex. They use mathematical formulas that we don't understand. Worse, they require constant adjustment based on thousands of variables. Economic conditions, weather patterns, political stability, even cultural holidays that affect worker productivity." Dr. Morwen nodded grimly. "Human economics officers spent years learning these systems. They didn't just run the programs. They fine-tuned them daily based on intuition and experience. The economic damage was spreading rapidly. Species that had prospered under human-mediated trade agreements were facing severe shortages. The Andorian agricultural worlds couldn't get their food products to market because shipping schedules had collapsed. The Centauri tech industries couldn't obtain raw materials because supply contracts were written in complex legal language that no one else could interpret properly. "Why didn't we know how dependent we were?" Zethkar asked. "Because humans never complained," Dr. Morwen replied. "They worked extra hours when needed. They solved problems before they became crises. They prevented conflicts before they escalated. They made everything look easy." Rintal, who had been quietly reviewing data, looked up with a pale expression. "Speaker, there's something else. Something worse." "What now?" "I've been studying historical records, looking for patterns." Rintal's voice shook. "Humans weren't just managing current problems. They were preventing future ones." "Explain." Remember the Xylophan-Silthari resource dispute 15 years ago? It should have led to war. Both species were mobilizing fleets, but somehow it was resolved peacefully. Ambassador Chen handled those negotiations, Quintel said. Yes, but how did she know to start negotiations before anyone declared the conflict officially? According to records, she began diplomatic contact 3 weeks before either species announced their territorial claims. Dr. Morwen's large eyes widened with understanding. Humans could predict conflicts before they happened. Not predict exactly, Rintal corrected, but they watched for early warning signs. They monitored economic pressures, population movements, resource scarcities, even cultural tensions. They identified potential problems months or years in advance. What kinds of problems? Zethkar asked, though he feared the answer. Rintal consulted his data pad. According to human diplomatic reports, there are currently 67 developing situations that could lead to conflicts within the next 2 years. Border tensions, resource competitions, trade disputes, cultural misunderstandings. Could lead to conflicts, or will lead to conflicts. Without human intervention, will lead to conflicts. Probably wars. The chamber erupted in panicked discussions. Representatives began arguing among themselves, each species blaming others for the growing crisis. Above the chaos, a new alarm began sounding. Emergency signals from 3 different sectors. Admiral Kextar received the reports first. His face went pale beneath his helmet. The Xylophan Republic is withdrawing from the Council. They're citing failure to resolve territorial disputes in a timely manner. What territorial disputes? Bromdar demanded. The ones that started last month, between Xylophan colonies and Proxan mining operations. The mediation was scheduled for next week. Too late, Quintel said bitterly. The Xylophans are mobilizing their fleet. They're going to settle the dispute themselves. More emergency signals arrived. The Andorian agricultural worlds were threatening to embargo food shipments until their trade agreements were renegotiated. The Centauri tech industries were accusing the Silthari of stealing their design patents. 3 minor species were demanding council intervention in disputes that had been simmering for weeks. Dr. Morwen stood slowly, her expression grave. This is what humans prevented. Every day, for 150 years, they identified potential conflicts and resolved them quietly. They mediated disputes before they became official. They negotiated solutions before problems became crises. So we negotiate now, Bromdar declared. With whom? Using what methods? Human diplomacy wasn't just about talking. They understood how each species thought. They knew which approaches would work with different cultures. They spoke everyone's languages. They built personal relationships over decades. Zethkar realized the horrible truth. The council hadn't just lost its bureaucrats. It had lost its peacekeepers. Without them, the galaxy was returning to its natural state: conflict, competition, and chaos. Can we contact the humans? He asked desperately. Offer them better terms? Rintal shook his head. We've sent 47 different messages to their last known coordinates. No responses. It's as if they've left our galaxy entirely. Another alarm sounded, then another. The cascade of problems that humans had spent 150 years preventing was finally beginning, and there was no one left who knew how to stop it. 1 year had passed since the humans disappeared. Council Speaker Zethkar sat in what had once been the most powerful governing body in the galaxy. Now only 26 species remained as active members. The others had either withdrawn or been expelled for breaking council laws. Dr. Morwen of the Threndaki Science Collective stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by holographic displays showing the results of her investigation. The data was overwhelming and terrifying. The complete analysis is finished, she announced to the remaining delegates. We now understand what humanity was to this council. The displays showed work schedules, task assignments, and productivity measurements spanning 150 years. The numbers told a story that no one had wanted to believe. Humans operated 40,000 automated monitoring systems across council space, Dr. Morwen began. These systems watched for equipment failures, weather problems, supply shortages, and potential conflicts. Every single alert was reviewed by human operators within 6 minutes. War Speaker Bromdar shifted uncomfortably in his massive armor. We have our own monitoring systems. Do you? Your systems watch for military threats and resource opportunities. Human systems watched for maintenance needs, diplomatic tensions, health hazards, transportation delays, communication errors, and social unrest. They monitored things you didn't even know needed monitoring. Dr. Morwen activated another display. Humans processed 2.3 million interspecies communications every day. Not just official government messages, trade negotiations, technical support requests, cultural exchange programs, student applications, medical consultations, and personal correspondence between citizens of different worlds. Trade Minister Silhan's crystal form pulsed weakly. Surely we can handle communications ourselves. Each species uses different communication protocols. The Zephyrians communicate through energy fluctuations. The Silthari use crystal resonance patterns. The Krillians prefer direct data transmission. The Threndaki use complex psychological concepts. Dr. Morwen's voice grew sad. Humans learned all these methods. They served as universal translators, not just for language, but for concepts and ideas that don't exist in other cultures. The displays changed again, showing diplomatic records from the past year. The contrast was stark. Before human departure, conflicts resolved in days. After human departure, conflicts escalating for months. Here's what we missed, Dr. Morwen continued. Humans didn't just react to problems, they prevented them. They maintained relationships with 300 non-council civilizations. These were species that didn't want full council membership, but needed diplomatic contact. Non-council species? Zethkar asked. Why didn't we know about this? Because they only trusted humans. Many of these species had bad experiences with other council members in the past. Humans served as neutral ambassadors, maintaining peace with civilizations that could have become enemies. Ambassador Quintel's energy form flickered nervously. What kinds of civilizations? Dr. Morwen's expression grew grim. The Void Hunters have a fleet of 8,000 ships positioned near our borders. They've been neutral for 90 years because of human diplomatic efforts. The Silicon Collective controls the rare mineral mines in the outer spiral. They've been sharing resources because humans negotiated fair trade agreements. The Nomad fleets patrol the shipping lanes and protect merchant vessels because humans convinced them it was profitable. Where are these civilizations now? Zethkar asked, though he feared the answer. Unknown. When humans withdrew, they took their diplomatic relationships with them. We've lost contact with all 300 species. Some might remain friendly. Others, Dr. Morwen gestured to the tactical displays. Others might consider us enemies. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. They had lost not just the humans, but the entire network of alliances and agreements that humans had built over 150 years. There's more, Dr. Morwen said quietly. The psychological analysis reveals something extraordinary about human nature itself. She activated a new holographic display showing brain scans and behavioral studies from dozens of species. Most intelligent species develop certain psychological traits: competition for resources, territorial behavior, preference for their own kind over others. These traits help species survive and grow strong. Of course, Bromdar agreed. Strength comes from putting your own people first. Humans were different. Their brains showed unusual activity in regions associated with long-term planning and empathy for other groups. They could think 50 years into the future and genuinely care about species they'd never met. Dr. Morwen highlighted specific brain regions in the scans. Look at these neural patterns. When humans encountered conflicts between other species, their stress responses activated. They felt actual distress when others fought, even when it didn't affect them directly. That sounds like weakness, Trade Minister Silhan observed. We thought so too, but it's actually incredibly rare. Most species can cooperate when it benefits them. Humans could cooperate when it benefited others, even at cost to themselves. Dr. Morwen showed work schedules from the past. Human personnel consistently worked longer hours than required. They volunteered for dangerous assignments. They spent their personal time learning other species' languages and cultures. They weren't paid extra for this, she continued. They weren't seeking promotions or power. They did it because they believed galactic civilization was valuable, even when it required personal sacrifice. Why? Quintel asked. What did they gain? Nothing material. But their brain scans show pleasure responses when they successfully prevented conflicts or solved problems for others. Humans were literally happy when other species prospered, even when humanity gained nothing. Zethkar felt a cold realization settling over him. Are you saying humans were naturally selfless? Not selfless exactly, but they could balance self-interest with group interest better than any known species. They could sacrifice short-term gains for long-term stability. They could choose cooperation over competition when cooperation served everyone better. Dr. Morwen activated her final display. This is why our civilization is collapsing. It wasn't built on strength or superior technology. It was built on human psychology, their ability to think beyond tribal loyalty, their capacity for genuine cooperation. But we cooperated, Bromdar protested. We all joined the council. We joined because it benefited us. We stayed because we gained power or wealth or security. Humans joined because they believed in the idea of galactic peace. They stayed because they wanted to build something bigger than themselves. Another emergency alert sounded. Zethkar's aide, Rintal, rushed into the chamber. Speaker, the Centauri tech industries have declared independence from the council. They're forming a defensive alliance with the Andorian agricultural worlds. And, Rintal's voice cracked, the Void Hunters have been spotted moving toward our borders. How many ships? Quintel demanded. Preliminary count shows 3,000 vessels. They're not responding to our communication attempts. Dr. Morwen nodded sadly. Without human diplomats, they have no reason to stay peaceful. More alerts began sounding throughout the chamber, multiple crises erupting simultaneously across council space. Can we hire humans as consultants? Zethkar asked desperately. Offer them massive payments? We don't know where they are, Rintal replied. But even if we did, the psychological profiles suggest money wouldn't motivate them. They left because we didn't value what they were trying to build. What were they trying to build? Zethkar asked. Dr. Morwen's voice was barely a whisper. A galaxy where different species could live together peacefully, where cooperation was stronger than competition, where long-term thinking prevented short-term conflicts. And we destroyed it, Quintel said bitterly. We never understood it, Dr. Morwen corrected. We thought galactic civilization meant having bigger fleets and more resources and stronger economies. Humans understood it meant having better relationships and wiser decisions and genuine peace. The alerts continued sounding, more species withdrawing, more conflicts escalating, more systems failing. Zethkar realized the horrible truth. They hadn't just lost their administrators. They had lost the only species capable of building true civilization. And without teachers, the lesson was impossible to learn. 18 months after humanity vanished, Council Speaker Zethkar stood alone in the Great Chamber. Half the seats were empty. Of the 47 species that had once made up the Galactic Coordination Council, only 16 remained as active members. The rest had withdrawn, been expelled for breaking treaties, or simply stopped participating as their civilizations crumbled. Zethkar's 6 eyes were dim with exhaustion. He hadn't slept properly in weeks. Every day brought new crises. Every decision seemed to make things worse. His aide Rintal entered the chamber carrying the daily crisis reports. The young Velkari had aged years in just months. His once bright purple skin was now permanently gray with stress. "The morning briefing, Speaker," Rintal said quietly. Zethkar braced himself for bad news. It was always bad news now. "The Proxan hegemony and the Centauri Alliance are in open warfare over mining rights in the Kepler system. 7 worlds have been bombed. Estimated casualties are over 2 million. Have we offered mediation?" Both sides refused. They say the Council lacks authority to mediate anything. Rintal consulted his next report. The Silicon Collective has cut off all rare mineral exports to Council space. Without their materials, most of our manufacturing has stopped. What about the Silthari Trade Corporation? Collapsed. Their leadership blamed us for the failure of the Universal Resource Allocation Act. They've joined the Outer Rim Independence Movement. How many species have joined that movement now? 14 confirmed, Speaker. Maybe more. Communication networks are failing, so we can't contact all our former members. Zethkar walked to the great window that overlooked the Council headquarters space station. The view that had once filled him with pride now looked pitiful. Only a few dozen ships were docked at the station. Most were maintenance vessels or emergency transports. Gone were the massive trade fleets. Gone were the diplomatic vessels from dozens of worlds. Gone were the exploration ships that had carried Council civilization to the stars. "What's our economic output?" Zethkar asked. "Down 87% from pre-departure levels," Rintal replied. "Most colonies have reverted to subsistence farming. Industrial production has nearly stopped. Scientific research has been abandoned. Military status? The Council Defense Fleet is down to 300 ships. Most species have recalled their vessels to protect their own territories. Admiral Kekstar estimates we could defend perhaps 2 systems if attacked." Zethkar felt the weight of failure crushing down on him. In just 18 months, one of the greatest civilizations in galactic history had collapsed into chaos and warfare. "Has there been any response to our messages?" he asked. "Nothing, Speaker. We've sent over 200 communications to the coordinates humans provided. Emergency frequencies, diplomatic channels, even primitive radio signals. Complete silence." Zethkar made a decision that should have been made months earlier. "Send one final message. Maximum power transmission, broadcasted on every frequency we have." "What should the message say, Speaker?" Zethkar looked out at the empty docking bays and failing infrastructure. "Tell them we understand now. Tell them we're sorry. Tell them we'll give them anything they want. Full voting rights on the Council, expanded territory for their species, complete autonomy over their internal affairs. Just ask them to come back and help us save what's left." Rintal began composing the message immediately. Within an hour, the most powerful communication array in Council space was broadcasting humanity's final offer across the galaxy. The response came 3 days later, but it wasn't from humanity. Zethkar was in his office when Rintal rushed in with a shocked expression. "Speaker, we have a response, but it's not from humans." "Then who?" "The observers." Zethkar felt his blood chill. The observers were the ancient species that had first contacted the Council over 1,000 years ago. They were old beyond measure, possibly the first intelligent species in the galaxy. They rarely communicated with younger civilizations. "What do they say?" Rintal activated the holographic display. The message was simple text, written in the common trade language. "You were warned." "That's all?" Zethkar asked. "There's more, Speaker." The message continued. 1,000 years ago, we helped establish your council. We recommended species for membership based on their potential to contribute to galactic civilization. We watched as you grew strong and prosperous. Zethkar read on with growing dread. We recommended humanity for council membership 150 years ago. We told you they possessed rare psychological traits, the ability to think beyond tribal loyalty, the capacity for genuine cooperation, the wisdom to choose long-term stability over short-term gain. We warned you that humans were not your servants, they were your teachers. They were showing you how to build true civilization, not through conquest or economic dominance, but through cooperation and mutual support. You had 150 years to learn what they were teaching. Instead, you saw only weakness where there was strength. You saw burden where there was blessing. You saw inefficiency where there was wisdom. The message grew more devastating with each line. The humans offered you the greatest gift in galactic history, the example of a species that could put collective welfare above individual gain. They showed you how to prevent conflicts instead of winning them. They demonstrated that true strength comes from building up others, not tearing them down. You rejected their lesson. You chose competition over cooperation. You chose short-term profits over long-term stability. You chose tribal thinking over galactic thinking. Zethkar felt tears forming in his eyes as he read the final paragraph. The humans have not vanished from the galaxy. They have moved beyond your reach, to build something new. They are establishing a civilization based on the principles you rejected: true cooperation, genuine peace, mutual prosperity. What remains in council space is what you chose. A galaxy that reflects your values, not theirs. You chose strength over wisdom, competition over cooperation, profit over progress. The teachers are gone. The lesson is complete. What you do with what remains is your choice. The message ended with coordinates, not to human space, but to a region beyond the galactic rim where no council species had ever explored. Zethkar stared at the coordinates for a long time. Finally, he asked, "Could we reach that region?" "Theoretically, Speaker, but it would require a journey of several years at maximum hyperspace speed, and we would need to cross territories controlled by hostile species. Hostile species that humans probably kept peaceful through diplomacy." "Yes, Speaker." Zethkar realized the full scope of humanity's gift and the Council's failure. Humans hadn't just maintained galactic civilization. They had been trying to teach other species how to transcend their basic nature, how to become something better than tribal competitors fighting over resources. The lesson had been rejected. The teachers had left. Now the students faced a choice: learn to be better or watch everything collapse. Outside his window, another ship departed the station, probably the last one for weeks. Zethkar sat in his empty chamber, surrounded by the ruins of the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known. Somewhere beyond the rim, humans were building something new, something better, something the rest of the galaxy might never be worthy to see. The cost of their departure was everything. The cost of their lesson was humility. And humility, Zethkar realized, was the one thing the Council had never learned to pay.